The events of that day, as you know, shook the lives of many people, including our next guest, who is working as an FBI agent and deployed to Ground Zero to support command post operations. That man, Mark Morgan, is joining us. He's a former acting CBP commissioner and Heritage Foundation visiting fellow. He joins us now to share his story. Mark, if you don't mind, share with the viewers. Tell us your story on 9/11. If you remember that 20 years ago, how can you forget? What was your mission that day?
Yeah, so I was actually started out as a special group that was based out of D.C. that was helping the overall investigation based out of the Washington area. And a small group of us went to New York to help facilitate communications, better coordination between what was happening at Ground Zero back to D.C., where, a lot of decisions were being made. And I tell you, Sean, there's so many emotions that come kind of pouring in right now. But there's probably a couple of things that really stick out in my mind. And one of those, besides standing at Ground Zero and seeing the magnitude, pictures just didn't do it justice. As horrific as the pictures we saw were, and we still see today, standing there actually physically in Ground Zero, there's not a single picture that could have done that justice.
What was your initial response in getting to Ground Zero? Obviously, you have a duty to carry out. But the emotional effects must have hit you at that time as well. Trying to get through that must have been difficult, to say the least.
It absolutely is. You're right, and that's part of our training, and we also know that just part of the job. You have to set that aside momentarily, but it's also important that you have to still address that at some point while you're still doing your job. And, some struggle with that, and it's not an easy thing to do. Look, I remember one of the areas I visited was the Staten Island dump, was referred to as Fresh Kills, where all the debris, about 1.2 million tons, went from the World Trade Center site to there to be sifted through for evidence and personal effects. And, there's a couple of things that stuck out there, too. One of them was I just remember seeing what I called as the grave site, where you had police and fire trucks that had been crushed by the falling concrete and mangled steel from the World Trade Centers. And I'm standing there just seeing these vehicles stacked on top of each other for me at the time, what seemed like it went on for miles. I remember this big hook and ladder truck. You can imagine this fire truck, how huge it is. It had actually been crushed to where I was actually taller than the roof. And I just stood there. What felt like hours is probably only minutes, just thinking about what was going on at the minute that happened. And it's still ingrained in my mind.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story. And I know that hits home to you as you were a part of those efforts there in that time. And it is difficult to discuss. And we have to remember, too, where that took us as a country. And that took us to the war on terror. And where we are today, the Taliban taking over Afghanistan now. Where they were 20 years ago, 90% of the territory, they're back to where they were. They've now announced their government. They've now announced the people that are in power within their government now. Talk to me about that and being the 20-year anniversary of these attacks and to seeing what has already unfolded and potentially the safety of our country today.
Yeah, Sean, I think this is a very important question. And what I've got is two separate things that go on. So being a special agent and what I saw in the years in the aftermath of 9/11 is I saw incredible strength and resilience of this country, but also from a law enforcement, intelligence community and military. What I saw is a better understanding in the years that follow this past 20 years of the importance of intelligence to better shape our understanding of the threat, how we use that intelligence to drive operations. And we've done tremendous things in the law enforcement community, Sean. We went from really a general reactive, hey, there's a crime, we go investigate it, to a preventative, proactive, intelligence-driven thought process that really helped shape how we look at things in today's world. Now, having said that, we still have extreme vulnerabilities here. We still have a ways to go. And one thing that sticks out right now, based on what we're seeing in Afghanistan, is the old phrase is, one of the easiest ways for us to repeat history is to not know history. And that's what concerns me right now. We've got to understand that the terrorist organizations, like you described now, the Taliban, it has as much territory as it has in Afghanistan as it did 20 years ago. It's still a terrorist operating base, and the resolve to continue to do harm to America, right to our homeland, still exists. We can't forget that.
Yeah, the Taliban was the group that harbored al-Qaeda, which is where Osama bin Laden's ties are, and the architect of 9/11 and the hijackers, et cetera, and all those that were a part of it. Though the Taliban claims they're different now, and some want to take them for face value, that would be unwise.
I think so, Sean. Look, I think what I've seen from Taliban right now is they're more savvy. They're smarter. I mean, let's just take a look at their rhetoric that they're using and their use of social media. Let's just take a look at those two alone. Look, as a former Marine, I was devastated to see them pose in military uniforms, raising the Taliban flag, representing the flag raising in Mount Saravachi. Look, that is a fundamental understanding of perception, of propaganda, and the use of social media to make an impact. The only thing that I see is they're stronger now ever than before, and the resolve, again, to do us harm hasn't changed. And Sean, real quick, one last thing, too, for this administration. Look, I don't want to be too critical right now as we're talking about 9/11, but look, they talk about how this terrorist organization doesn't get along with this terrorist organization. Sean, that's all rhetoric because, again, they all share a single thing in common, their hatred for the United States.
Yeah, the possibility of a potential civil war between ISIS-K and other combatant groups in that region. The quest for power, though, again, right now, as it stands, the Taliban is the governing power in Afghanistan. And now the difference is, well, they have our weapons, they have our vehicles, they have our gear, our tactical gear. The final thing I wanted to ask you about are those, we did this amazing mission where our military men and women were with 13 sacrifices of U.S. service members, but they were able to get 123,000 people over, refugees, those that cooperated with the United States over 20 years. We helped them get here along with 6,000 Americans. We know that still Americans are there trying to get out. The State Department, we're not very clear on what the State Department is doing, quite frankly. But we know that they brought people over. But there is this criticism of the vetting process and who actually is coming over on these flights.
Yeah, Sean, the criticism is very much warranted. Look, right now, what the administration isn't being clear about is the numbers that are actually being flown out are not the majority of U.S. citizens or those SIV holders that actually risk their lives to help American forces in Afghanistan. They're general refugees that just want to get out of the country. And the same goes with the number of Afghans that are reaching American soil. It's not those SIVs. It's just general refugees. And look, what they have done is, in the essence of speed, not substance. There is no way that they're able to do a complete, robust vetting process. Look, the Secretary Blinken even said that this week, and that we've seen countless examples where people that are on no-fly lists have actually made it out of Afghanistan and made it to third countries. Look, right now, what we should do is, look, we have a moral obligation to help those that helped us. That's a no-brainer. I think we all agree on that. But look, there's no reason why we can't slow down. They've left Afghanistan, those that were evacuated, they're in third countries. Slow down. Let's make sure we do a complete, robust process and ensure that we do not import a single threat in the United States. Sean, we can do that. It's just common sense.
And if the Taliban was so negotiable and catering to negotiations, you wouldn't have those folks clinging onto C-17s by chance they would live. I mean, the video is proof in itself. Mark Morgan joining us live. Mark, thank you for your service, and thank you for sharing your story on 9/11. We do appreciate that, sir.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the Heritage Foundation's YouTube channel. With more than 500,000 members, we are the nation's largest conservative research and education institution. We believe the principles and ideas of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing. Please help us further our mission by subscribing to this channel and sharing our videos with your family and friends.